StarCast is proudly sponsored by DoghouseSystems.com. If you use the code StarCast or Biscuit at checkout, you will get double memory on your next Doghouse System. And also TweakedAudio.com. Go to TweakedAudio.com for high-performance noise-reducing earbuds. Use our code StarCast and get 30% off plus free shipping on your entire order. And finally, SC2QuoteOfTheDay.com. Daily quotes from the StarCraft 2 community. The site may suck, but the quotes are sick. And make sure to go check out their t-shirts in their new store. Once again, that's SC2QuoteOfTheDay.com, and we thank them for their support. Sponsor an episode of StarCast at thestarcast.com.
Hell, it's about damn time for StarCast.
Incoming transmission.
Biscuit.
And welcome back, everyone, to the 144th episode of StarCast, the StarCraft podcast. I'm Garrett Weinzierl, and with me, as always, today is none other than himself, Kyle Fergusson. How you doing, Kyle?
I'm doing quite well. That was an interesting. It's Kyle Fergusson.
It's that Kyle guy again. I just every day I lance him, and he falls off, but he grows right back. It just doesn't stop, man. You don't go away.
Oh, I love being here. Super excited for our first Noobisode. This is the Protoss Noobisode, so welcome everyone. And you're going to learn how to play Protoss today on the first day of spring.
Yes, where it is snowing, where Kyle lives, and raining, and actually a little cold in Florida, which is unusual. Not the raining, but a little cold is unusual. But yeah, so these are the Noobisodes. We did this back when Wings of Liberty launched with some of the members of our competitive clan, CBO. But we're more famous now, so screw those guys. We've got some pros joining us this time around. So this is the Noobisode, which means we have to have one certified not noob joining us. Because Kyle and I, as you guys know, we're total noobs. Absolutely noobs. So we've got three pros for the next 3 weeks coming on for the three different races. Today is the Protoss episode, and joining us for the second time, actually, on StarCast is Kevin. The rest of you probably know him better as Fnatic.Harstem. Welcome back to the show, dude. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Oh, it's good. It's good to have you back. We've gotten so much positive feedback regarding the last time you were on the show, which was actually, we just found out, exactly 20 episodes ago, back on 124.
Yeah, I really enjoyed doing the show back then, and I hope it's going to be cool this time as well. So.
Yeah, it's quite good. People, if you missed episode 124, you should go back and listen to, at the very least, the interview with Harstem, because it is just overflowing with positivity and just really fun stuff about about StarCraft in general. But also, you closed it out by singing Katy Perry for us, and that is.
I was hoping we wouldn't have to mention this.
Well, we're not going to ask you to sing again. It couldn't be helped.
Yeah. So quite okay, I think.
Yeah. So, anyways, you see a still picture of Harstem on our overlay because for whatever reason we can't get the webcam to work. But you're coming in loud and clear, and that's really, at the end of the day, all that matters. So, anyways, how you doing, man? You are actually not. You're usually. Where do you live usually? The Netherlands?
I live in the Netherlands.
Okay.
With my parents, near Rotterdam, the city, not the player.
Oh, gotcha.
So yeah. And now I'm staying somewhere else in Germany at Take's place. Take is the guy that hosts Home Story Cup. So yeah.
So you're in his incredibly awesome living space at the moment, right? Where he shoots Home Story Cup.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, before the show, off air, when the camera was actually working for all of 5 seconds, Harstem did a pan around, and there was just so many computers and awesome desk chairs. I was like, oh, I want one of those. Yeah, it was good. So that's cool. How's Germany treating you?
Yeah, Germany is fine. I'm staying with another guy. I'm not actually staying at Take's place. I'm staying at Munchie's place, and yeah, we've been having quite some fun.
Nice, good stuff. Are you? I'm a big beer fan. Do you enjoy the German beer?
Yeah, I enjoy all kinds of beer.
Gotcha.
German beer is fine as well.
Okay, all right, good. Because this is a local beer garden we go to, so they've got wonderful beer. So that's what anytime someone's in Germany, you got to ask them about the beer. Anyways, so I guess let's just dive right in here. Heart of the Swarm is out, and to put it incredibly simply and kind of idiotically, things have changed for all three races.
Yeah, that's correct. Terran changed quite a bit with the Widow Mine, the Speed Med effect. Protoss changed quite a bit, especially with the Mothership Core. And Zerg has changed a bit because Broodlords are less viable against Protoss, and they got better Hydras, Vipers, Swarm Host, and better Ultras. So yeah, you could say things have changed quite a bit.
Yeah, it's funny. You look at the Zerg and it's like, wow, they've probably got more fancy tools than anyone else. But like right now, it seems the going kind of popular opinion is that Zerg's underpowered. Do you buy into that?
No, I think maybe in the late game. I'm just talking in CVP now because I don't have enough expertise on the CVT area.
Right.
But in CVP, I think the mid game and the early kind of late game, or even like the normal late game, is fine. But once Protoss gets his perfect army, there's no way for the Zerg to ever win. Especially if the Protoss is able to build like 30 or 40 cannons and has 5 Tempest, 25 Void Rays, a few High Templars, and 2-3 Archons. There's no way for the Zerg to beat that. But to get to that army is close to impossible. So I think it's fine.
Yeah, the supreme late game of Protoss has always been so damn powerful. In the past, we had Broodlords to deal with that. But now with your newfangled heir, particularly one that does the ridiculous long range of the Tempest, that can't be as big of an issue.
No, Broodlords are no issue at all anymore, especially because Tempest 3-shot them. So if you have 3 Tempest and you just shift-click them, they're gonna melt like butter.
Yeah, that's pretty ridiculous. I mean, they had to put something in there because they were getting rid of Vortex.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
They need to give you some way to deal with Broodlords. But do you think they went a little overboard? Do you think the Tempest is too strong against Broodlords?
I think the moment the Tempests are out, Broodlords are completely useless. But I think it's fine because before, if Broodlords were out, Protoss was completely useless in general. So
yeah, that's a good point.
I kind of like the change.
I bet. So, but overall, generally, before we get into kind of nitty gritty and some of the questions we've gotten from fans, how do you feel about Heart of the Swarm just in general in all the matchups?
Let's start with PvZ then. PvZ has improved quite a bit. Let's say in the late game, it's not only Infestor Broodlord anymore. Actually, it's almost no Infestor Broodlord anymore. It used to be, basically just Infestors, then going into Broodlords or Infestor Corruptors, some kind of weird timing, and Protoss would almost always do 3 base or 2 base all-ins, and now Protoss is able to do take a 4th base with cannons, with the Mothership Core, with Tempest, Storm, Colossi. You need a lot of different units, but you can actually get to the late game without dying to Broodlord. So I really like PvZ. The only thing I don't like about it is that you're almost obliged to open up with Stargate because of the Mutas. Mutas have become really, really strong in Heart of the Swarm with the increased regeneration and the increased speed. So if you don't have Phoenixes ready, or you need to make some kind of double Stargate or triple Stargate Phoenix switch, it's going to be really, really hard to be the good Muta player.
Yeah, that regeneration is just I mean, Kyle, you're a Zerg at heart. It's pretty awesome.
It's ridiculous. You can barely even sacrifice them anymore. You need that supply freed up, but you just can't get rid of your Mutalisks.
Poor guy.
Oh, it's such a shame, Kyle. I really feel
Feeling
for you.
your pain, man.
Hey, I'm just thinking back, a year and a half ago, where we were all assuming that the Tempest was going to be murdering every Mutalisk in the sky with splash damage. So I'm glad that things went the other way.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Maybe Mutas are a little bit too strong in the mid game because I really don't see any good counters except for Mass Phoenix.
Yeah, I was thinking that because I mean, in the past we've had tons of cannons, Archons even hanging out in the back of bases, but when those Mutas show up in the mid game, you're not even to that tech nor able to afford that many cannons. So I guess Phoenixes would be the way to go.
Yeah, like that's why you open Stargate most of the time. But even if you do have, let's say you open Robo Twilight, you have +2 on your Stalker, sorry, and you have like a Templar Archive, so you can get Storm quite easily. If you storm the Mutas once, they'll be in like let's say orange HP, then they just fly away, come back 20 seconds later, and they kill your High Templar that has no energy left. It's almost impossible to get a fourth base in this scenario, and the Zerg will just turtle with spine crawlers and get 6 base economy, 6 bases, like 12 extractors, just keep on pumping mutas, and eventually switch to Ultra Ling or Ultra Baneling, something like that, and it's super hard to beat.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned it's hard to take a fourth. A lot of the questions we got, at least I'd probably say the most repeated question we've seen when we took questions from Team Liquid, we took some questions from our forums, was about like, when is the right time to expand as Protoss? And I mean, it was varying, like, when do I take my third in ZVT, or when do I take my fourth, etc. So it's funny that you bring that up, because we've gotten a lot of that question, like, when the hell do I expand? So
yeah, that's a pretty tough question to answer, I guess, just in general, but yeah, it of course depends on your opener. Should I answer it now, or should we save it for a bit later?
We can save it for a bit later. I wanted to, with the specific questions, I wanted to kind of open up with basics and then kind of move into more specific strategies. And I guess we can start that now. So I guess what would you say generally are some of the most common mistakes that beginner Protoss players make?
In PvZ or just in general? Because so far I only covered PvZ.
Oh, I'm talking general, all matchups, just like kind of general kind of strategies or just play styles you should kind of be aware of.
Well, I guess not having enough production is one of the things that a lot of people struggle with. I sometimes have it as well, especially against Terrans. If you're playing gateway styles, it's really important to keep up your gateway count. Don't let it slip too much, and if you're on 3 base, your money will rise really quickly, because 3 base is basically the perfect economy. You'll have 17 or 1800 minerals per minute, and you need to spend those boys. So you'll need 1 robo and like 10 gates to spend it efficiently on 3 base, I would say. Yeah, another thing is, for pros, it's really important to have good force fields. Almost every early game depends on force fields. Let's say if your opponent is forgetting you and you miss your force field, it's game over. So I guess that's something that you should really have down before you start really getting higher up the ranks.
I know there was that custom game Baneling defense, was it? Where you had to split all the Marines. Marine split challenge, that was it.
Yeah.
Is there anything like that you've used for force fields? Or any sort of, just grab a friend, sit down, make him rush you over and over again?
I used to do it with Blink Stalker against Blink Stalker in Protoss against Protoss. Just play there's the unit test map where you can just spawn units freely all the time. So we would continuously recreate a certain engagement with 12 Stalkers against 12 Stalkers, and then keep on practicing it for like 1 or 2 hours in a row. See what's the best, moving it back, blinking it to the side, blinking it back, and after a while you get quite good at it, I guess. So that's one of the things. And I think there was a map in Wings of Liberty. I can't really recall the name. It was like StarCraft Master Challenges or something like that. There were like 25 challenges per race, or maybe 10 per race. And one was that you had to force shoot like 4 different sides. One time there would be banelings, or maybe it was like banelings all the time. You just had to force shoot and storm them, something like that. And that was quite helpful at the start, but after a while, when you got the basics down, map like that don't really matter that much anymore.
Yeah, because I mean, once you get into more advanced play against other people, like with force field, a lot of times you don't always want to keep all of the units out. Sometimes you want to cut the army in half and kill off what you can.
Yeah, exactly. So those maps aren't perfect, but for certain situations, it's really good to practice the same one over and over again, and those maps allow it.
So would you say, so to kind of surmise what you just went over, you'd say kind of the best kind of building blocks for solid Protoss play would be force field micro, Blink Stalker micro, and then of course just solid economy?
Yeah, I think having good production, of course, like build the standard stuff like building pros, building pylons is way more important than having good Blink Stalker micro. But let's say if you're platinum or you're getting to diamond, it's really important to have good Blink Stalker micro, or have like any micro at all. Be able to lay down some good force field is also pretty important. So yeah.
Well, moving on then. I remember when I first was in Wings of Liberty, and the first kind of tip and trick I got that melted the brain out of my face was shift commands. Because I didn't know going into Wings of Liberty, I didn't know about that. So I was playing for like the first 2 weeks, sans shift commands. And
I remember telling you that because you would move your tanks and they wouldn't siege as soon as they stopped moving.
Yeah.
You just press shift and hit that button. They siege up once they're done.
And this was back when Steps of War was still on the ladder, and you're like, dude, there is no reason you should ever lose a game on Steps of War against the Zerg. And that just blew my mind. So to some of the really new players, if you're out there and you have just picked up Part of the Swarm, I just want to inform you that shift queuing is a thing. You hold down shift, you do a command, you can do another command, and it'll just automatically keep going. But Harstem as a pro, do you have any like kind of, I don't know, tricks that you always use involving the shift queue mechanic?
If you're blinking into a base, you can shift blink in. Sometimes if you want to blink in with let's say 25 stalkers and you try to blink in one go, 3 or 4 stalkers will be left behind. But if you use shift blink, so you click, you move, and then you shift blink down a cliff, they will blink down 2 by 2 or 1 by 1. This is good in some scenarios, but in other scenarios you want to use blinking down immediately, especially if you have less stalkers. But I think that's one of the tricks that almost every Protoss uses, or still uses.
Yeah. Now the issue that causes that, right, is if your like ball of stalkers is wider than the range of blink, that's why they end up getting stuck.
Exactly.
Okay.
So if you would have 50 stalkers and you try to blink down in one go, 25 would get stuck and they already wasted their blink, and then the Marauders roll in and kill everything.
Gotcha. But then if you shift move, they'll wait until they're closer to the edge and then blink.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
But,
okay.
It takes a bit longer because they're going
like
walk
in
in a long row. So it's a decision you have to make if you want to do it with shift click or in one go. But most of the time, I think shift click is a bit better.
Yeah. Gotcha. I think we talked about that on the original Protoss Noobisode, and another thing that was like blew my mind because I had never known about that at the time. But
the parade.
Yeah. So anything else? I mean, one of the really common ones that a lot of the new players I know that I talk to don't know about is just like when you want to just like if you're scouting a Zerg base, for example, and you're waiting for them to drop their spawning pool, you can just draw like 20 circles with the shift command and your probe or whatever. It'll just keep going around.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's also one of the things. If you want to block a hatchery, you can actually make a square with patrol move, and it will keep on going. So if you make a perfect square, it will just keep on going without stopping. If you do it with shift, it will have a tiny bit of delay, and the probe will need to accelerate once again. So it will get hit by the drone that's trying to chase you. So that's one of the things that a lot of people use. If you're, let's say, maybe Grandmaster or really High Master, you'll have the APM to just manually click it, so you don't have to use patrol anymore. But before that, I always used to use patrol to block hatcheries, and it's pretty good.
Nice. That's awesome. I didn't know that. So if you connect your final point to your first point, it'll just go in a continuous square?
Exactly.
Gotcha. Well, that's great to know.
Let's start at the beginning of the game. The game fires up. How should Protoss control their probes? Do I put a single one on a hotkey, and that's like my builder for the rest of the game as long as he doesn't die? Or do you do select one, kind of like a Terran style, we select one, get him out there, shift him back?
I think the best thing to do is to select a probe that just returned minerals. So normally you of course you split. Well, I think it's auto split now. So the probe's auto split. Then you build like a few workers. You get your first pylon, and you build your first pylon with one of the probes that's returning minerals back to the base. Once it's done with that, you just like click it away quickly, build your first pylon, and try to send it back to the minerals. When you're doing this, you always want to try to click your probe on the closest minerals and have them double stack on the closest minerals. Double stacking is that 2 probes are on 1 mineral patch, but that's actually pretty beneficial if it's a closer mineral patch. If we can, for example, if you can think about a map like Entombed Valley, there are 4 really easy to spot close mineral patches, and there it's actually a pretty big advantage, especially in stuff like PvP.
Gotcha.
Where every mineral matters.
Okay.
All the minerals are kind of arrayed in the circle, but some are actually physically closer to the base.
Yeah, exactly,
Right.
And those 2 seconds matter quite a bit.
Gotcha. So you want to double stack on the close minerals before you even have a single one on any of the far minerals?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That would be ideal.
And that kind of goes for all 3 races, right? I mean, it's not a Protoss specific thing.
Yeah, that's not a Protoss specific, but just like a random thing that I think everyone should do.
Right. All right. Well, that's good to know.
So I guess the next thing that comes when you're starting up this game is your first chrono boost builds up 25 energy on the Nexus there. Use it probes, something else, and what would you suggest to someone who finds themselves on a 2-base, 3-base scenario with so many chrono boosts they don't even know what to do with them?
If you have a lot of chrono boosts, always use it on upgrades. I think using chrono boosts on upgrades is always one of the best things, or probes. So I think probes and upgrades is always the best. In the early game, you want to use the first 2 or 3 on probes, and after that, you might want to use it on your Mothership Core in Heart of the Swarm, that is, or you might want to use it on your Stalker if you want to be a little bit more aggressive. You never really use it on your Zealot because your Zealot and Cybercore timing lines up perfectly.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, there you go.
Well, you brought up the next thing, so we're making our way through Protoss, and it comes Mothership Core time. Every time I've been playing Protoss since Heart of the Swarm launched down, I just want to get like 2 units together, 2 Zealots, my Mothership Core, and go kill some ogres in the woods and like collect some items, get some XP. It's such a Warcraft 3 feeling unit.
Yeah, I think the timing to get the Mothership Core in almost any matchup, except maybe PvC, is so in PvP and PvT, you normally want to get it after your first Stalker, so Zealot, Stalker, and then Mothership Core, and then you can decide to be aggressive with it or not. Like you mentioned, it's really cool to be aggressive with it, but it's not as strong as people think. Like it dies pretty quick and it's not fast, so if you get caught by 8 or 6 Marines, it's just gonna die, and the same if it gets caught by 2 Stalkers, it's gonna die as well, except if you maybe have a time warp or some kind of recall. But you don't really want to waste too much energy in the early game with your Mothership Core. So yeah, that's basically it with the Mothership Core.
Gotcha.
Wait, go for it, Garrett.
I was just going to say, I'm sorry if I missed it. Did you talk? You said the timing was different for PvZ. What do you think the timing should be for that?
That actually differs. If you're going for Phoenix builds, like a lot of people have been doing, I think you want to get it pretty late. You want to have like 100 energy the moment your 3rd base finishes if you're going for Phoenix, because Phoenix is really gas intensive. 150 gas for the Stargate, and then 100 for every Phoenix. You want to get the +1 upgrade as well normally, and you want to have a sentry. So the Mothership Core doesn't really fit in properly in builds like this.
Gotcha. That's a lot of gas.
Then if we talk about if you're going Robo, I think you can afford it after your initial Stalker and after the Warplate research. So basically the same as PvP and PvT. And this is assuming that we're going for Forge Fest expand or Nexus first. If it's Gate expand, you want to get it the same time you do it in PvT. So you'll do Zealot Stalker, Mothership Core, or Zealot Mothership Core Stalker.
Gotcha.
So you're getting the Stalker. Are you getting Warp Gate research going with that 50 gas, or are you saving up to 100 to get the Mothership Core right away?
Sorry. I forgot to mention, always Warp Gate first. That's
okay.
Priority.
Gotcha. Yeah, sorry if we're trying to spell it out a little more specifically than usual, just because we're trying to cater to new players as well as veterans. So, getting into some of the questions we got from fans, what is the best way for a low-level player to deal with Widow Mine drops as Protoss? So I guess, what would you say is kind of the easiest way to deal with mine drops?
Man, I wish I knew. I would be using that all day. No, but if we're talking in the early game, I think the only way to deal with it is with an observer and a few stalkers in every base. Once we get to the 9-minute mark, you normally want to have your first forge up, so you can just build a cannon in every mineral line, and I think that's the perfect way to deal with Widow Mine drops later on, because you don't want to waste supply in your base. If you have like 80 supply and 8 of that supply is tied up in stalkers camping in your base with 1 observer, that's not really what you want. So you'll just build a cannon in every mineral line, and you have those stalkers with your army.
Gotcha. All right, cool. And another thing which is obvious to anyone I think who's played for more than 3 months, but obviously for new players, just run your workers when in doubt. Like, if anything is dropping in your base and you're not sure what's going on, just grab all your workers and get the hell out of there.
And that's what I do.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
especially with Widow Mines. And I think especially against Terran drops, it's really tricky. Because the medevacts are so quick and the Marines are in your mineral line in a second.
Yeah.
So you can't lose probes immediately. Activate the Nexus cannon, Photon Overcharge I think it's called. And always target down the medevac, the Warp Prism, or basically the thing that is being able to drop them and being able to take them out. It's really annoying if you lose 5 probes and the medevac picks up and leaves. And it's not as annoying if you lose 5 probes and you can kill the medevac and after that all the units.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. It's funny when you say, especially with Terran drops, it's like, yeah, there's really nothing that Terran can drop out of a medevac that doesn't just completely make you freak out. Because if it's Marines, they can stim. If it's Battle Hellions, they one-shot everything. If it's tanks, God forbid, it's really going to hurt. And if it's Widow Mines, dear God, yeah. Widow Mines especially, like, you should get your workers out of there.
Yeah.
It's not worth the risk.
Actually, today I saw the only unit that doesn't do a lot of damage against Protoss. I saw in Cross. Cross is a German Terran, and he played against Sasa, Fnatic Sasa, for the Team Story Cup. And Cross decided it was time to drop 2 SCVs. Well, and those didn't do a whole lot of damage.
Okay, well, in a game where you're not screwing with your opponent, there's nothing that...
I think it was just a mistake because it was 50 supply behind at that point.
Oh, God.
No.
Oh, yeah, that sounds like it. Unless he was just like, I'm going to bring him to repair the medevac. I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, that's rough. Anyway, so yeah, run your workers. And then, again, to surmise, I feel like we got off topic. Cannon in your base, 1 cannon or observer and stalker. So, anyways, moving on. Another question we got. Do you hotkey your warp gates, or do you just use the W key? They wanted to know what technique you use for warping in units quickly.
Before I have warp gates, I hotkey them. And actually, I always hotkey my warp gates. I just realized. I was like, maybe I shouldn't. I think it's actually better to not hotkey them after you have it, after you have warp gate research, but I'm not sure because when I add gateways later on in the game, I hotkey them, so the moment they finish, I'm able to tap and then turn them into warp gates immediately.
So that's important.
You might forget that otherwise. I'm not sure what's better. I think it's just personal preference.
Yeah. I mean, with what you just said makes good sense, and I that sounds more beneficial to me from a discipline aspect. That way, you never forget to convert a gateway.
But on the other hand, you might want to use the control group you're using for the for the warp gates for something else, for units, for example. Especially if you're like I'm doing, I'm hotkeying the Nexus on 4, my warp gates on 5, and maybe I could use that for something else. But I don't really have any trouble with my hotkeys at the moment, so I think I'm fine.
Do you find it incredibly hard to change your hotkey ritual? Because I find it incredibly hard. It's like anytime I'm like, okay, I'm going to start hotkeying this way, I constantly fumble for a while until I get used to it.
Even when I switch between playing Zerg or Protoss and I go, extractor, okay, I'm good. And I come back 3 minutes later, nothing's happened. I'm like, oh, A, not E. Oh.
Yeah, exactly. I think, you just have to be very disciplined in using your new hotkey. If you shouldn't play it on ladder, that's the first thing, because you're going to get really frustrated because you're losing games that normally you would win.
Yeah.
So that will make it very hard to not switch back in mid-game. Let's say you're playing a really long game and it's like, I guess I use the old hotkey for a bit, especially if it's control groups.
Yeah.
I found it really hard to change them, so I just got a smurf, or you can play against friends or against the computer even, is fine.
Yeah.
Now, this happens, just about every game, gold and lower. You get in a fight, you're controlling your army, you think you're awesome, you go back to your base, fight's over, you won, you lost, whatever, and you're sitting on 1,000 minerals, 500 gas. What's the best way to drop a lot of minerals and a lot of gas in that situation? I mean, the first thing is to not get there in the first place. But if you do, what should I do?
Increase production. I think increasing production is always pretty good. If you want the fight, you might want to throw down a new Nexus. Let's say if you're on 3 base, you might want to take a 4th base. Really depends against what race you're playing. Against Protoss and Terran, I think actually against any race it's good to throw down another Nexus once you want to fight. Pretty convincingly, you have a lot of minerals. Depending on the situation, you might want to build a few cannons if you lost the fight. But I think the main thing almost always is warping in and then adding production. So adding a second robo, adding 5 more gates or adding 4 more gates, whatever. Really depends on your economy at that point. Let's say you're on 2 base and you're only on 4 gates, then you can add 2 more gates or 3 more gates and a Nexus. And then you're basically out of minerals.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily spend all of it on production facilities because you might end up making more than you can afford on the amount of expansions you have.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I also throw down like the 3rd base, build some new probes. So.
Right. Yeah, that's a good rule
I think
of
the
thumb.
first thing you want to do after you finish a fight though is to get a new unit drawn. So a new warp in, get your robos doing something, your stargates doing something, check if some upgrades are done, see if you can do something with that. And once you spend all that money, see if you have something left. If so, if you want to be defensive, add a cannon. If you want to go into a longer game, add some production, add a 3rd base or add a 4th base. And yeah, I think that's the best way.
Awesome. Well, we did get some new maps with this expansion. Is there any that you just immediately, as a Protoss player, downvote?
I'm gonna take a look actually, because in the beta there was like one map which was horrible. I can't even remember the name. It was the snow map, and it just was amazingly bad. Oh yeah, now I have vetoed Core Hall City, which is the map with a ramp that needs 2 force fields to close off. So it's so stupid in PvP. Everyone's doing like 4 gate and 3 gate, like it's Wings of Liberty again. Wings of Liberty like 2010. And
yeah, this is the one that has 2 starting bases in your starting area with a 3rd that could have collapsible rocks onto it.
Yeah, exactly. It's an amazing map. One that almost everyone vetoed. Then I have Star Station vetoed as well, because I really dislike the map against Zerg.
Oh, Protoss looks so good on the Protoss platform.
Yeah, I guess, but man, your 3rd is so hard to take against Zerg players. If they do something like a Roach Max, they're going to be able to get the perfect concave. And also against Terran, it's really hard to keep your 3rd because it's in such an odd location. If you have your army at your 3rd, they'll pick up and drop into your main, and then you have to walk around. Then when they see, they just afterburn out, and boom, gone is your 3rd base.
Oof.
So, yeah,
Rough.
I really dislike that map.
No.
So Core Hall and Star Station, I would say. And as a 3rd veto, I would maybe pick Neo Planet S, which is the new ice map. I think it was made. Oh, it's a Caspa tournament map, I see. And that also has a really bad defendable 3rd base, and it has no watchtower, so it's really hard to spot for drops against Terra.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, so you really look for easy 3rds. So something like Newkirk Precinct, it has 2, almost 3 different options for your 3rd.
Two different options for my 3rd, actually.
Oh, okay, yeah, keep it close.
Yeah, the other one is not really viable as a 3rd, I would say. I think you're meaning the base quite open in the middle of the map as another 3rd.
Yeah. So you got your natural, the ramp, and then the ramp to the right kind of leads down into a possible 3rd.
Yeah.
But I know that's what you were saying with Star Station. That's a big issue for Protoss, having that easily concavable 3rd.
Yeah, now that you're mentioning it, I also think this map is pretty hard to get a 3rd, actually, but I don't know, I just like the map. It's just a feeling. In the late game, it's really cool, and it's really easy to spot drops. With 3 observers, you're able to cover the whole bottom area of the map. So I really enjoy playing this map against Terran. Yeah, it's just a pretty good map in general, I feel like.
Cool. I finally found the list myself, and I'm looking at this like, oh yeah. Now I'm after the fact. I'm like, don't dig up what we just talked about, Garrett. But Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into some more fan. These are, I think, all fan questions from here on out. We actually have some names to go with these now, so we get to call out by name the people who are having trouble playing this game.
Poor guys.
Discarax, who is a frequenter of our forums, he wants to know what is the best early or mid-game composition that can transition you into the epic Sky Toss late-game composition.
This is gonna be really hard to answer in a simple way. So we're gonna do it per matchup. Let's say Protoss against Terran. I think it's really hard to transition into Sky Toss in the late game against Bioplay. I think against Bioplay it's close to impossible. But if you really want to do it, you want to go for Colossi, High Templar, then add a ton of cannons, like really a ton of cannons. Let's say 5 at every choke. Have maybe 12 or 14 High Templar in total. Split them out across the map near your cannons that are blocking the chokes. And at this point, you're trying to sacrifice your Stalkers or maybe even your Colossi and get 3 or 4 Tempest out. Because I don't think Skytos can work against Bio because of the Marine DPS is just too much. They're just gonna Marine Ghost. I don't know. I don't see it working. Against Mech on the other hand, you want to open with Charge Lot, Immortal Archon, a few High Templars. Try to deny the 4th base of the Terran as long as possible. When you're playing against Mech, you almost always want to be up 1 base. So if you see he's taking a 3rd, you're getting a 4th. If you see his natural, you want to get a 3rd as quickly as possible. You try to contain him on 3 bases as long as possible. If he moves out to take a 4th, which is normally a lot harder to do. Actually, on every map, it's pretty hard to do in Heart of the Swarm, except for Aculan Waste. I don't think it's easy to deny the 4th on Aculan Waste against meching Terran. And at this point, you're trying to transition into Stargate. You will build 4 or 5 Stargates, get the Fleet Beacon, and if he tries to push while you're transitioning, you just run away from his army and run around it. So you try to base trade, send zealots everywhere. Because the meching army is so slow, he will either have to go all into your base or defend. The moment you see him defend, you either TP back with the Mothership Core, or you just run away if it's possible. And at that point you'll have like 4 or 5 Tempests, because you always want to have 4 or 5 Stargates. Start a +1 upgrade on your Cybernetics Core, add a 2nd Cybernetics Core, and you're basically set to go. Lots of Tempests, lots of High Templars against meching Terran is really good. Then in PvZ, I would say it's really dependent on how the game goes. In PvZ, I feel like Zerg is really setting the tempo for the matchup. If they choose what you have to get. If they're getting Hydra, you're gonna go Colossi, Stalker, Void Ray, and you slowly transition out of the Colossi. So you keep on adding more Void Rays, start adding High Templars against basically the Vipers, I feel like. Then you add a few Tempest, a lot of cannons, and slowly whittle away. The same way that Zerg used to do in Wings of Liberty. Now it's finally time for vengeance.
Awesome,
Then,
which is ironic since this is the Zerg expansion.
Exactly. Then the final thing that we have is PvP. I think if you open with Charge Lot Archon, maybe into Storm, you're set against most compositions. Then if you see Mass Void Rays, which is kind of common in PvP, you'll have the Storm ready. Storm is actually really good against Void Rays if you storm them well, and it's really hard to split your Void Rays properly and then engage, because they stack up immediately if you attack move with them. So and because they're only actually good when they have the Prismatic Alignment, I think it's called, the charge ability.
Yeah.
They're only really good if they're using that. So the moment that wears off, you're good to go. You slowly transition into Void Rays, Tempest, and your late game army against Protoss should be something like a lot of Tempest, a few Void Rays, and 5 or 6 High Templars to storm his army if he's coming for you. This is if your opponent is getting an air army as well. If he's getting more of a ground army, you want to get a few Immortals, because he'll probably have Stalkers and more Void Rays. The bigger his ground army, the more Void Rays you want to have. And you might want to actually add in 1 or 2 Colossi then, if he has a bigger ground army. So, a complete air army is also possible in PvP, the final thing. If you add a lot of carriers instead of a lot of Tempest, let's say 3 for Tempest and the rest Carrier Void Ray, because carriers are actually a lot better against Storm. mass void rage just get countered by Storm. So the moment your opponent is having Storm and you're having a ton of void rage, you should either transition into Tempest or into Carriers. And some people have been choosing to go Carriers, some have been choosing to go Tempest. I like to go Tempest, but Carriers is also fine.
Oh, it's nice to see that there's a reason to make a carrier.
Yeah, but it sounds rather specific. This is, epic sky toss. No carriers anywhere else?
I think I spoke about this with some German Protoss players, and it might actually be possible in against mech in PvT, but it feels like void rays are just really good at the moment, so why wouldn't you make them? And in PvZ, it's just a waste of supply. Also because of Neural Parasite, because it's a bigger supply unit, it's way more important if you lose it to Neural Parasite. Like, you're gonna have maybe 30 void rays, but you can only have so many carriers, maybe 15 or something like that. So it sucks if you lose one of the 15 instead of one of the 30. That's not that big of a deal.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that's why you're not using the carrier so much in any of the matchup. But it's actually doable in PvP.
Cool. Now, a lot of this, like, transitioning to it, all this sounds like, pretty much across the board. Obviously, there's going to be differences here and there. It sounds pretty aggressive, and obviously we had MLGs this past weekend, and there was a lot of aggressive toss play. Another question from Discrax asked was, do you think really that's the only way for toss to deal with other aggressive builds at the moment, and do you think that the kind of turtling to mid game tactic is something that's going to be left behind in Wings of Liberty?
Actually, I think against Terran it's way more important to turtle well.
Okay.
Because of the speed meta effects. The moment you move out, there's going to be a ton of units in your base, whether it be Widow Mines or Marines and Marauders, or even Hellions is good enough to kill a ton of probes.
Yeah.
So I feel it's really hard to move out against Terran until the late game, where you have a 180 supply army, a few pylons out on the map, cannons in every base, 4 base economy, something like that. Before that, it's really hard to move out.
Yeah.
In PvZ, I'm not sure actually if you should move out or not. Some people have been saying no, some people have been playing pretty aggressive with some 4-gate pressure. I think you can do both. You can turtle into the late game with tons of cannons, tons of carriers, if you really want to. Tons of Tempests, just a lot of units, and hide behind your cannons. You can also do timing pushes, like we used to do in Wings of Liberty. 2-base timing pushes with, let's say, Sentry Immortal in, the one we all know. And the 3-base timing pushes with Stalker Colossi are still pretty good, actually.
Gotcha. So we're not throwing everything out with Wings of Liberty. That's good to hear.
No.
And then moving on with more, this is Discrax's final question. He said the forward pylon, when and where do you place it? He also wanted to know, do you like Huck's style of creating a pylon highway around the map, or do you have a different strategy for pylon placement?
Sorry, the last part I didn't get.
Oh, do you like Huck's style of creating a pylon highway around the map, or do you have a different strategy?
No, I think having a lots of pylons around the map is really hard to achieve. Except maybe in PvT. But in PvP you need map control for it, because if the other guy has the watchtowers, he's just going to be able to deny your probe, and with the probe the pylons, and he will just send around Cellans all the time to check for pylons.
Yeah.
So it's really hard. You really need map control in PvP, or at least be able to have your half of the map. And then if you get it up, it's amazing, because the moment he moves south, and let's say you have 10 free supplies, so you're on like 190 supply, you can warp in 5 zealots, send it to one base. Then if they die, you send it to another base. You maybe even want to warp in some DTs. Yeah. So I think pylons are really good in PvP. In PvT as well, you really want to backstab with zealots and Dark Templar when the Terran is moving out on the map, or even when you're assaulting another base. So let's say you're trying to attack the fort, 10 zealots into the natural, and if you're a little bit defensive with storms, you will always be able to get away. So yeah, I think it's really good. Against Zerg, it's really hard because of creep spread to get down pylons, but if you get them down, it's good. In the early game, I think you always want to avoid the watchtowers and the obvious overlord locations. So if you see a spot where an overlord is safe, you don't want to walk your probe there to build a pylon right under the overlord.
Yeah.
So what I would do, what I would advise, what was his name again?
Discrax.
Discrax.
Or you can just call him Disco for short.
Okay, Disco. I would advise him to check replay from a Zerg perspective and see where he places his overlords. Try to watch 2 or 3 different Zergs and see where Zergs place their overlords. If you really want to, you can even deny it first with the Mothership Core to get vision and a Stalker. Go around the map, have a probe follow, and then you'll be able to throw down your Pylon safely. And happy 8 gating or whatever all in you want to do with it. Even some kind of pressure is fine, I guess.
Gotcha. All right, cool. Next question comes to us from Venny, who said, when should I take my third base against Terran who are going for a 10-minute push/drop play?
Yeah, this is one of the most common things, and it really depends on the style you're playing. There are 2 main styles that I would call it. You have Charge-Lot Archon or Charge-Lot High Templar Archon, and you have Colossi style. With Colossi style, it's a little bit easier to get your third base down, so I would say... actually, it's also dependent on what the Terran is doing. The thing you want to scout for with your Observer is if he's getting 3 Rex, then a Command Center, or if he's adding 2 more Rexes before getting the Command Center. If he's getting 2 more Rexes before the Command Center, you want to delay your Nexus by about 30 or 40 seconds from the timings that I'm saying now, because I'm going to assume the most standard Terran play, which is 3 Rex into Command Center. So with Colossi, you would want to take it around 11 minutes, 11:30, and with Charge-Lot High Templar, the moment you'll have 2 High Templar with Storm ready and 1 High Templar in every base with the cannon defended. And your Mothership Core, you want to have it fly around between your natural, your third, and your main base, a little bit in the middle, so the moment the drop is spotted, you'll be able to feedback, warp in 4 or 5 Zealots, and use the Mothership Core cannon. So it really depends on how the game is going, if your High Templars are sniped, but normally if you have 2 High Templars with Storm, you're going to be fine against most pushes, cool. Except if he has maybe MVP Micro and he dodges all your Storms, but I haven't met that yet. So.
Now, this seems to be all, of course, very much based on scouting, which honestly we probably should have talked about at the beginning when we were talking about kind of general tactics, but now's as good a time as ever. Do you have any tips or tricks for scouting? Because it's a very fundamental part of the game that I think is lost on a lot of new players.
I think with the hallucination is now free, so you can just use hallucinated phoenixes to scout, basically. That's what I've been doing. Also against Terran, you always want to get 1 observer, and against Protoss, you always want to get at least 1 observer. I think against Terran, it's good to get a few more to spot for drops, but that's all personal preference, basically. So, yeah, hallucinated phoenixes is the main method to scout.
Cool. Venny also asked, what do you think is kind of the proper way to split an army? Example he gave is, I pulled too many Stalkers to defend a drop, and I just had my main army slaughtered as a result.
Most of the time against Terran, you don't want to get too many Stalkers in the first place, because Marauders completely destroy Stalkers.
Yeah.
So you normally against drops you want to have, let's say it's 2 Medevacs, you want to have 5 Zealots and 1 High Templar, if you're going for High Templar attack. Otherwise you will get like 5 Zealots and 2 Stalkers. With the Stalkers you always target down the Medevacs. 2 Stalkers take 6 volleys. Man.
You can say shit, it's cool.
I meant to say 6.
Well, it's funnier.
Swearing is funny. 6 volleys to kill a medevac. So if he stays around long enough, you're gonna kill at least 1 medevac. And 5 Zealots are good enough to deal with 2 dropships full of units. So yeah, that's basically it. Otherwise you want to have 1 High Templar to feedback 1 medevac, or even feedback both of them. You hope they die, but if they don't have enough energy to die, well, at least they can't heal their units anymore, and your 5 Zealots will be enough to clean up the rest of the drop.
Alright. Oh, cool. That's good to know. What about, is it any different with Zerg drops?
Zerg drops is weird, because Zerg drops in, normally drops complete armies and assault your third at the same time. So you want to have a few units at your third and have an hallucination. Spot if there's anything coming to your third to see if you have to warp in anything. Normally you just want to send almost everything to your main base, and a thing I've been doing is use planetary nexus or what's it called, photon overcharge on my third base. So if he sends like 10 links, they're not going to do anything. If he sends 20 links, it's like I warp in 2 zealots, and the photon overcharge will clean up the rest of them. So photon overcharge on the third nexus, and then the rest of your army to your main base. If you know that it's coming, you can warp in, depending on the size of the amount of overlords, or like how many overlords there are, you can warp in 6 or 12 stalkers. 12 stalkers one-shot overlords, so if you shift-click overlords, then they're gonna die immediately, and you can kill 3 or 4 before he even drops, then blink away. And if it's like 2 overlords, then 6 stalkers will do, because then you'll get both of them before they're fully unloaded. One before it even started unloading, and the second one will drop 2 units, and your 6 stalkers will be able to deal with 2 units. I hope so, at least. Except maybe if he drops Ultralisk, but that's a different story.
You're in for a whole different world of hurt if that happens.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basically it for. Oh well, I guess in PvP, you should warp in. Always have a cannon at home and use the planetary nexus at the base being dropped at. Try to focus down the Warp Prism, because once there's no Warp Prism anymore, there's not going to be any new units. So Warp Prism always first priority.
Yeah. All right, cool. You're being so wonderfully thorough, by the way. Thank you.
Seriously.
Spur of L on Team Liquid asks, I'd like to hear Harstem's thoughts on why there is no Nexus First or even a very fast Nexus expansion build in PvP. Is the Mama Core out in time to defend pressure? Is that why? By the way, just before we answer this, can we all agree that Mama Core is a terrible frickin' name and it sounds stupid as hell when people are casting?
Yeah, let's say Mothership Core.
Yeah, Mothership Core, or just the Mother Core,
or just Core.
Just the Core, yeah.
The core. Yeah. Just call it the Core. There is nothing else in the game with the word core in it.
I'm assuming when you say core that there's not a flying fusion core about on the map. So we're good.
Sorry, there is a fusion core. Okay, yes. I'm sorry. There's now. I have been immediately debunked, but still, Mama Core just sounds dumb.
Yeah.
I'd rather you call it a Mother Corker.
Oh well. Yeah, as you can hear, I'm not alone.
Yes, we can hear that. They've been incredibly quiet up until now. So
yeah, they just finished their workday, so I guess.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. What was the question again? I forgot.
It's what are your thoughts on why there's no Nexus First or even very fast Nexus builds in PvP?
I think there are.
Okay.
I don't think there's enough PvP play to show all of them yet, but I've been using quite some one-gate expands in PvP, and some people have been using Nexus First. Because in PvP a lot of people don't scout anymore. Nexus First is actually pretty viable because of the Mothership. The reason people scouted was because of 4-gate and 2-gate proxy. So the Mothership Core is able to beat both of those pretty easily. Or well, the 4-gate is actually beaten by sentries because you can't warp up with pylons anymore. So yeah, I guess now that there is no scout anymore, Nexus First isn't a viable build that you can do every game, but it's something that you can throw in there every once in a while, I guess. Maybe 20% of your games, 25% of your games in PvP.
Okay, cool. Well, that's good to know. So there you go, Spurvel. It does exist.
Yeah, we're just not seeing it yet, but soon.
Yeah, that's it, and this is still really, really early.
Yeah.
So it's like we haven't seen everything there is to see. So, and then our final fan question comes from Wrathwort. He asks, "Are early Sentry's force fields still worth it, or is the Mothership Core better for use for defense, and instead put more power into your air or ground army?"
Well, like I mentioned, if you're playing Stargate in actually any matchup, I think your Mothership Core is going to be a bit delayed because it's so gas intensive, but normally sentries are still the way to go because it can block off a ramp, especially early game PvP. The Mothership Core cannon doesn't cover your complete base, so you'll just be able to stand in your base anyway and try to kill some buildings, and once the Mothership cannon or like the photon overcharge wears off, he'll just walk in with the units he already had up there, some reinforcement, and kill you. So I think you always need a sentry in every matchup. And against Terran, it's also good for catching units and then having your zealots and Archons slaughter them. So yeah.
Yeah.
I think sentries are still pretty good.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Rathwort might be one of the people who hasn't mastered force fields yet, because they're so damn good. Like, if you're good with force fields, they're absurd.
Yeah.
I mean, still to this date, it just makes me want to pull my hair out because I love heavy bio play. And it's like, oh, my bio force just got cut in half. That's the end of that.
Or all your banelings stuck in a single box.
Ooh.
Oh, that feeling, so good. Then storming them.
That's a good, indeed. That's that'll put an O face on a caster real fast.
But what about the time warp? I mean, how should we be using this thing? It reduces the movement speed of the units dropped in the area by 50%. So it's great if something's trying to run away, but if something's coming towards you, like rounding up your ramp, is it good, or is that a waste of energy? Save it for a photon overcharge.
In early game, most of the time it's a waste of energy. If it's in defensive use, except let's say Blink Stalker against Blink Stalker, then the guy who's getting time warped gets a really hard time pulling back or getting back the Stalkers in the fight that he blinked back. So yeah, it's really situational. I can't really say like you have to use it like this because it's too hard. You always want to keep your mothership alive, so if your mothership is on the verge of dying, you want to use your time warp to see if it can still get away. But yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. The thing I've probably seen it most used for, and I'd be curious to get your opinion on this, is when I've seen some Protoss, they move in offensively with like a ground army and the Mothership Core, and they're attacking the natural expansion, and then they time warp the ramp from the natural so that the units coming to defend take a lot longer to get there. And if you need that last extra second to kill off a natural,
yeah,
it seems pretty effective.
Yeah, that's pretty effective. But instead of using the time warp, you can of course also try to target down the hatch or the whatever building it is you're attacking, and then just recall home.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So we made it through all the fan questions. We made it through the basics, and yet we didn't bring up the Oracle at all. Are you not a fan of the Oracle, or?
Oh man, I just don't use it.
They seem so punishing. I mean, we saw a lot of Oracle use at NLG.
Okay, let me put it like this. The moment the guy doesn't have defenses ready for the Oracle,
yeah,
it's gonna be game over, maybe. It's gonna be, it's gonna hurt a lot. And like, really hurting a lot. You're gonna lose 10 workers. If you don't have anything in position, you're gonna lose 10 workers. If you have 2 stalkers in position, it's not gonna do anything. Or let's say 3 stalkers. 3 stalkers, it's gonna kill 1 worker and it's gonna die. And you're gonna be so far behind in the game because you went Stargate and an Oracle, which is extremely expensive. So it's really a hit or miss unit. And I don't know. I'm not sure if I like it. And against Terran, Widowmines one-shot it. So if you fly it in and the Widowmine hits you,
yeah,
I can tell you that feeling isn't good.
That's like being on the opposite end of all the banelings in a box.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's no good. So, but yeah, I guess before we end this episode, is there any other nuggets that you feel people need to know that we haven't discussed?
Early thirds against Zerg, maybe? They're really good. Like
early third bases?
Minutes. Yeah, third base against Zerg. Get 2 cannons there. With the Mothership Core cannon, you're going to be able to defend almost all pressure, actually. You have a sick economy. The one thing that bothers me, though, is Mutas. Like, they just take 4 bases, get up to 90 drones, or even 5 bases, 90 drones, and build a ton of Mutas. Then I just die most of the time, but if they don't do Mutas, I'm in a really good spot.
Well, is there a way you could say you went for the early third? What if you scouted them going for that heavy Muta play? Is there a way you could counteract that?
Yeah, I think double Stargate would do fine. Yeah. If you have a few Blink Stalkers to stall and then double the Stargate. I'm, of course, accelerating a little bit, but you're not just going to instantly die against the Mutas. But I think Mutas are really good, but
yeah,
maybe not as good as I make them out to be.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's always something you can kind of always tell when you talk to certain players, like what they're personally like losing to or what they personally find very very annoying. It's just like Mutas, man. I freaking hate Mutas. It's like Indiana Jones, like Mutas. Why did it have to be Mutas? So,
Mutas and Widowmines and Medevacs.
Oh my, that's rough stuff. So, anyways, yeah. So we're pretty much at the end of the show. No emails this week because we're taking so many fan questions. We're gonna save all kind of unrelated emails until after the Noobisodes have completed. So to those out there listening, like, why wasn't my email read? We're not deleting them. We're just saving them for when we're finished with this 3-week run.
Well, and that'll put us at April 11th. So some of you have sent campaign questions, or I really like this, or why did this happen in the end of the campaign? So when we get to those on April 11th, we can pretty much freely talk about it.
Not have to worry about spoilers. Yeah. Did you play the campaign, Harstem?
Yeah, I finished it in like 3 days. I actually died a few times in the campaign. It's pretty hard.
Oh no way! Did you play it on brutal?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was a total wuss and played through my first time on normal just because we had Jim Raynor on the show last week, so I was like, crap, I have to beat this as fast as possible because we're gonna have Jim Raynor on the show.
I guess that's a legit excuse to play it on normal.
Yeah, I beat it in 1 day. I just sat there all day playing the campaign, so I was like, I'm just gonna throw this on normal and get through as quick as possible. But yeah.
Oh, I was so excited to play this thing on brutal because the brutal in Wings of Liberty as a Zerg player, it was brutal. It was awful. They're trying to.
It is still.
You have to maintain multiple buildings. I mean, I can play Protoss, but only once my work gate's done.
Yeah, no, I would still argue that the Wings of Liberty brutal campaign is hard as all get out, whereas I feel Heart of Storm's easier because Kerrigan as a unit is broken.
Yeah.
She's so good.
She's pretty hot as well.
Yes, they're very good at modeling the female figure over there at Blizzard.
Yeah, she looks really good, and she is really good.
Whose job is it, by the way? Like, all right, you're in school, you go to career fair day. No one tells you there's a job to model some hot chick's butt.
Yeah, butt animator.
Butt animator. That wasn't there. It was like you could be a school teacher or a fireman or a doctor. Like, no, I want to draw hot women all day. That's what I want to do. So, I don't know.
Sounds like a good job, actually.
It does. It sounds wonderful, doesn't it?
Well, she certainly got an upgrade out of that leotard she was wearing in Brood War.
Oh, God, yeah. That was, someone was posting old Brood War art on, I think it was Reddit this past week, and it was just like, man, the Kerrigan design has really come a long way. So, it's, it's funny, so. Well, anyways, Harstem, thanks again for stopping by, and is there any tournaments coming up where people can see you in, and anything else you'd like to promote?
Any tournaments? Let me think for a second. I think DreamHack Stockholm is in a few weeks, 4 or 5 weeks. The first DreamHack stop of the DreamHack ISO Open. Then, after that I probably go to DreamHack Summer. And maybe there's something in between, I'm not sure yet. So I think there was some kind of tournament in Paris, but I'm not sure if I'm going there yet. I would like to thank Fnatic for supporting me, my sponsors, MSI, ISO, and Steel Series. And
did someone just photobomb but sponsor bomb?
Sponsor bomb me.
Oh, that's great.
So MSI, ISO, and Steel Series. And that's it basically.
All right, well that is awesome. Again, thank you so much. This was Fnatic.Harstem. Go check him. Go watch him in DreamHack and go to Fnatic.com to support him and his team. Thanks again. As always, we'll do our roundup. Tune in next week because we're having another Fnatic member on the show. Fnatic Nama will be joining us for our what would you say?
Santeri Lottene.
What's that?
That's his name.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. He'll be joining us for our Terran Noobisode. He is the non-noob, obviously, the person joining us that is making us look like we know what we're talking about. It's always nice to have them around. An important note about this, though, because of the time difference, much like with Harstem, we're going to have to pre-record with Nama, and we are pre-recording with him this weekend. So if you want to submit questions like we did today, send them in right now, because we're going to be talking to him this weekend. That email is starcastshow@gmail.com, or you can post them in our Team Liquid thread, or you can post them on our forum. We're checking all of them, so you've got options. So that's.
I have one question for Nama.
Oh, sure. What is it?
How does he stay in such good shape? Look at that body.
We may tack that on to the end. We love our goofy questions.
That would be cool.
Yeah. And then episode 146, which is going to be April 4th, is going to be our Zerg Noobisode. And the pro joining us for that episode will be LZ Gamer, a friend of the show. He's been on quite a few times, so we're looking forward to having him back. So anyways, check it out. StarCast is a production of amove.tv. TheStarcast.com is the place to go for our forums, archives, shirts, and all kinds of other stuff. You can catch us live every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. Other than this show, it was pre-recorded because Harstem, man, you're in a different time zone. We're not going to keep you up till 4 in the morning. So this one's technically not live as you're listening to it, but hey, usually we're live Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/thehandsomenerd, and you can check out all our VODs on youtube.com/StarCastShow. Follow us on Twitter at the StarCast. Follow me at Garrett Art. You can follow Kyle at Kyle Fergusson, and our guest today at Harstem. And of course, you can check out all other shows on AMove TV. This Week in Blizz. Biggest fan, Kyle. What are you guys covering next week?
This week is dance memes. So I am watching every YouTube video that I've avoided religiously for the past 2 years.
Lots of Harlem Shake.
Oh, man. The worst part is when you go into an office building and you hear, like my mom texts me this weekend, like, do you think my cat's grumpy enough? And I'm like, oh, my God, you are like a year late.
That's great. Hey, Harstem, was there a Harstem shake?
No, they really wanted it. Everyone kept on tweeting me about the Harstem shake, but I declined.
Gotcha.
Good
in
man.
a polite way.
Good. It's good. It's not
The
funny
Harstem
anymore.
shake isn't supposed to be there.
All right, gotcha. You just green screen like 20 Harstems just jumping up and down and doing like pelvic thrusts. It'll be wonderful. Or
Yeah,
or
that is
terrible.
A lot of fun. Sounds fun.
Great. Also, finally, all the graphics on today's show are done by me. You can go to nomoonart.com for my design work. I'm always available for freelance. And you can check out our sponsors, doghousesystems.com. The code is StarCast. It gets you double memory on your next Doghouse Systems gaming rig. That same code gets you 30% off and free shipping on your entire order of earbuds from tweakedaudio.com. They have many different styles, many different colors, and you get 30% off and free shipping on the whole kit and caboodle. So go check that out. And then finally, SC2 quote of the day, where they're taking people like Harstem who say really funny things and tweeting it out for the world to see. So follow them on Twitter at SC2quotes and check out their store at sc2quoteoftheday.com. Harstem, thanks again. We will see you guys next week with Nama on the Terran episode. Enjoy the outro music, and we'll see you later.
Take care.
Yo.